From the humid green veins of the Mekong Delta to the jagged peaks of the north, the air in Vietnam was never silent. It was a sky occupied by the most sophisticated machines of the 20th century, fueled by JP-4 and raw ambition. This is the complete catalog of the steel wings that defined a generation of warfare and changed the world. We begin with the fighters, the predators that stalked the clouds above the canopy and the SAM sites below. Standing as the undisputed icon of the conflict, the F-4 Phantom II was a 15-ton testament to brute force. It was a massive twin-engine interceptor that relied on raw thrust to overcome its lack of aerodynamic grace. Flown by the Air Force, Navy, and Marines, it became the universal symbol of American intervention in Southeast Asia. It was the primary MiG killer, a dominant presence that ruled the sky through power and sophisticated missile arrays. Then came the F-105 Thundershelf, known to every pilot who sat in its cockpit simply as the Thud. Originally built for the high-speed delivery of nuclear weapons, it was thrust into the grinding attrition of conventional bombing. It bore the heaviest burden of the Rolling Thunder campaign, screaming over the north at low levels to evade radar. Despite its speed, the cost of its service was high, as it faced the world's most concentrated anti-aircraft fire. The F-100 Super Sabre, or the Hun, was the first American fighter capable of supersonic speed in level flight. In the early days of the war, it traded its role as a high-altitude interceptor for the dirty work of mud moving. It flew thousands of close-air support missions, dropping napalm and firing rockets to save troops pinned down in the jungle. It was the workhorse of the South, providing a shield of fire for the infantrymen struggling in the mud. In the Navy's arsenal, the F-8 Crusader was revered as the last gunfighter in an era turning toward missiles. While other jets relied on temperamental electronics, the Crusader retained its 420mm cannons for close-in combat. It earned a legendary reputation as a dogfighter's dream, maneuvering with a lethality that few North Vietnamese pilots could match. It claimed the highest kill ratio of any Navy aircraft in the war, proving that old-school tactics still held weight. Small, nimble, and deceptively lethal, the A for Skyhawk was affectionately nicknamed the Scooter by those who flew it. It was the lightweight hammer of the Navy and Marines, capable of punching far above its actual weight class. Throughout the war, it served as the backbone of carrier-based strikes, delivering ordnance with a precision that larger jets lacked. It was the favorite of many, including future legends, for its responsiveness and rugged ability to return home. When the sun went down, or the monsoons turned the sky into a wall of gray, the A-6 Intruder took the lead. Its bulbous nose housed a revolutionary radar system that allowed it to see through pitch-black darkness and blinding rain. It was the all-weather hammer of the fleet, ensuring the enemy never found a moment of peace under the cover of night. The Intruder didn't just fly through the weather. It owned the storm, striking targets that others couldn't even find. The A-7 Corsair II, known as the SLUF, brought a new level of technological sophistication to the strike mission. Replacing the Skyhawk, it introduced the first head-up display to the fleet, allowing pilots to keep their eyes on the target. This revolution in avionics allowed for unprecedented bombing accuracy, turning the Corsair into a surgeon's tool of destruction. It was short, little, and ugly perhaps, but its effectiveness on the battlefield was absolutely undeniable. Deep in the night, the F-111 Aardvark moved like a ghost, earning the nickname the Whisper for its quiet approach. With its swing-wing design and terrain-following radar, it could hug the jagged treetops at supersonic speeds without a pilot's touch. It flew solo missions into the heart of the North, striking high-value targets before the enemy's air defenses could even wake up. It was a technological marvel that foreshadowed the future of stealth and precision night strike capabilities. The F-5 Freedom Fighter was the agile skirmisher of the skies, tested during the specialized Scotia Tiger program. It was a small, simple, and highly reliable jet that excelled in the close-quarters environment of the South because it was easy to maintain and operate. It was supplied in large numbers to the South Vietnamese Air Force, It proved that a lightweight, cost-effective fighter could be just as valuable as the multi-million-dollar interceptors. Standing out as a piston-engine anachronism in a world of screaming jets, the A-1 Sky Raider was the SPAD. It could carry a massive load of ordnance and loiter over the battlefield for hours, unlike its fuel-hungry jet counterparts. This made it the perfect escort for search and rescue missions, providing a persistent umbrella of fire for downed pilots. The Sky Raider was beloved by the troops, a rugged reminder that sometimes the old ways are the best. The A-37 Dragonfly, or Super Tweet, was a tiny trainer transformed into a ferocious ground attack machine. It was designed to operate from the short, rough airfields scattered across the Vietnamese countryside with ease. Despite its small stature, it could carry a bomb load nearly equal to its own empty weight, a feat of engineering. It proved once and for all that in the dense canopy of the jungle, size was not the measure of lethality. The B-57 Canberra was the night worker, a British-designed bomber adopted by the United States Air Force for its versatility. With its exceptionally long wings and massive bomb bay, it was perfectly suited for long-duration night interdiction missions. Specialized in truck busting, hunting for convoys moving along the Ho Chi Minh Trail under the canopy of stars. It was a silent predator of the dark, turning the enemy's supply lines into a graveyard of burning metal. We now turn our gaze to the heavy hitters, the bombers and gunships that brought the ultimate weight of fire. The B-52 Stratofortress was the sledgehammer, the most feared symbol of American strategic air power in the entire world. Flying in cells of 3 at altitudes that made them invisible to the eye, they carpet-bombed enemy concentrations. During Operation Linebacker, they obliterated the North's industrial heart, proving that no target was beyond their reach. The AC-47 Spooky, famously nicknamed Puff the Magic Dragon, was a converted World War II transport with a new purpose. Fitted with 3 side-firing miniguns, it could circle a friendly outpost and rain down a terrifying curtain of fire. At night, its red tracers looked like a solid beam of light connecting the heavens to the earth below. It could break any infantry assault in minutes, providing a literal shield of lead for those trapped on the ground. Evolution led to the AC-130 Spectre, a machine that would become known as the Angel of Death among its enemies. Armed with Vulcan cannons, Bofors guns, and a 105mm howitzer, it was the ultimate evolution of the fixed-wing gunship. Using sophisticated sensors, it hunted trucks with the precision of a predator, becoming the deadliest weapon on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. To those on the ground, the sound of its engines was either a sign of salvation or impending doom. The AC-119 Shadow and Stinger were the specialized truck hunters, twin-boom transports converted into lethal gunships. They were designed to supplement the aging AC-47s and provide more coverage over the vast network of enemy supply lines. The Stinger version was particularly fearsome, adding jet engines for better performance and 20mm cannons for increased lethality. They were the unsung heroes of the night, keeping the pressure on the North's logistics at all hours. Now we enter the realm of the electronic warriors and the naval heavies that operated from the rolling decks. The Douglas A-3 Sky Warrior, known as the Whale, was the largest and heaviest aircraft to ever operate from a carrier. Originally designed as a nuclear bomber, it found a second life in Vietnam as a tanker and electronic jammer. It was the giant of the fleet, a versatile platform that provided the essential support strike packages needed to survive. Before the modern radar planes we know today, there was the Grumman E-1 tracer, the stoof with a roof. It was easily identified by the massive surfboard-like radome carried on its back, which housed its early warning radar. It provided critical coverage for the fleet, watching the horizon for incoming threats during the early years of the conflict. It was the eyes of the Navy, a sentinel standing guard over the carrier groups in the Gulf. As the war progressed, the Grumman E to Hawkeye or the Hummer arrived to take over the role of aerial command. This twin turboprop aircraft with its distinctive rotating radar dish became the sophisticated eyes of the fleet in the north. It could track enemy MiGs hundreds of miles away and direct F-4 Phantoms to the intercept with clinical precision. It transformed the chaotic air war into a coordinated game of chess, giving the Americans a massive tactical advantage. The EA-6A electric intruder was the jammer, a version of the A-6 designed to carry electronic pods instead of bombs. Its mission was to blind North Vietnamese radar systems, protecting strike packages from the deadly surface-to-air missiles. It played a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, sacrificing its own offensive power to ensure others survived. Without the electric intruder, the losses to the North's air defenses would have been catastrophically higher. The EC-1-1 Warning Star was the Big Eye, a radar-carrying constellation that orbited tirelessly over the Gulf of Tonkin. It provided long-range early warning of MiG attacks, acting as a beacon of safety for American pilots in the area. By guiding fighters to their targets and warning of ambushes, it saved countless lives throughout its long service. It was a massive, piston-engined guardian that watched over the theater of war from a distance. The EB-66 destroyer was known as the Shepherd, a converted bomber filled to the brim with complex electronic warfare gear. It escorted strike packages into the teeth of the enemy's defenses, using its equipment to jam and confuse tracking radars. It was the shield for the F-105s and F-4 South, allowing them to reach their targets and return home safely. Its presence was a comfort to every pilot who had to fly into the Red River Valley of the North. We move now to the reconnaissance and forward air control aircraft, the eyes that sought out the hidden enemy. The SR-71 Blackbird was the undisputed king of speed, a machine that operated at Mach 3 on the edge of space. It photographed the North with complete impunity, as no missile or fighter could ever hope to catch it. It was a phantom in the stratosphere, providing the high command with the most secret details of the enemy's movements. The RF for Phantom was the camera carrier, a version of the famous fighter that traded its guns for higher resolution lenses. These pilots flew unarmed into the most heavily defended airspace in the world to bring back proof of damage. Their missions were some of the most dangerous of the war, as they had to fly low and straight to get the shot. They lived by the motto, unarmed and unafraid, though the reality was often far more harrowing. The RA-5C Vigilante was a sleek, supersonic spy that operated from the decks of the Navy's largest aircraft carriers. It used a suite of advanced electronic and optical sensors to map out enemy positions with incredible detail. Despite its large size, it was surprisingly fast, relying on its speed to escape the inevitable anti-aircraft fire. It was a sophisticated intelligence tool that gave the Navy a clear picture of the battlefield from above. The RF-8 Crusader was the low-level eye, famously known for the slogan, "Smile, you're on candid camera." These unarmed Crusaders flew at terrifyingly low altitudes and high speeds to capture high-resolution photos of the enemy. The pilots who flew these missions had nerves of steel, as they were often the target of every gun in the area. They provided the ground truth that was essential for planning the next day's strikes and operations. The O-1 Bird Dog was the quintessential forward air controller, a tiny, slow observation plane that seemed out of place. Its pilots flew at treetop level, daring the enemy to reveal their positions by shooting at the small aircraft. Once a target was spotted, the Bird Dog would mark it with white phosphorus rockets for the jets above. It was a deadly game of bait-and-nouse, where the smallest plane in the sky held the most power. The O-2 Skymaster, nicknamed the Push-Pull, was the twin-engine replacement for the aging Bird Dog Scout. With an engine in the front and one in the back, it offered more reliability and staying power for the FAQ mission. Its unique configuration gave it a distinct look and improved handling at the low speeds required for observation. It was a constant presence over the jungle, searching for the telltale signs of enemy movement beneath the trees. The OV-10 Bronco was the dedicated counterinsurgency aircraft. It's designed specifically for the unique challenges of jungle warfare. It featured a twin-boom design and a high-visibility cockpit that allowed pilots to loiter over the battlefield for hours. The Bronco could direct airstrikes with precision and even join the fight with its own rockets and machine guns. It was a versatile tool that bridged the gap between observation and direct ground attack. The OV-1 Mohawk was known as the Watcher, an Army surveillance aircraft with a distinctive bug-eyed cockpit design. It utilized advanced radar and infrared sensors to monitor enemy troop movements along the borders and trails. By seeing heat and motion through the canopy, it provided intelligence that was otherwise invisible to the human eye. It was the Army's high-tech scout, patrolling the dark edges of the conflict where the enemy felt safest. Now we delve into the secret war and the special missions that officially never took place during the conflict. The North American T-28 Trojan was the secret warfighter, a radial engine trainer turned into a lethal jungle attacker. Flown by the Ravens in Laos, these planes were loaded with gun pods and napalm to strike hidden targets. They operated from dirt strips in the middle of nowhere, fighting a war that was kept off the front pages. The Lockheed YO-3A Quiet Star, or the Ghost, was perhaps one of the strangest and most specialized aircraft ever built. It was essentially a powered glider, designed with a muffled engine and wooden propeller to be almost completely silent. It flew at night at treetop level, using night vision equipment to spot enemy troops without ever being detected. It was a silent witness to the enemy's nocturnal activities, providing data for the gunships to act upon. The Helio U-10 Courier was the CIA's preferred taxi, a legendary short takeoff and landing aircraft of the era. It could take off from a space no larger than a soccer field and fly so slowly it appeared to be hovering. This made it the perfect tool for dropping spies and supplies into the deepest, most inaccessible parts of the jungle. It was a master of the black missions, operating in the shadows where traditional aircraft simply could not go. The Beechcraft QU-22 Pave Eagle was the drone killer. It's a modified civilian plane with a massive electronic hump on its back. Its primary job was to orbit high above the Ho Chi Minh Trail and relay signals from ground sensors. While it was designed to be flown as an unmanned drone, it usually carried a pilot to ensure the mission's success. It was a vital link in the Igloo White program, which attempted to automate the detection of the enemy. Long before the modern era of the Predator, the Ryan AQM-34 Firebee served as the original robot spy. These jet-powered, unmanned drones were launched from the wings of C-130s to fly over the most dangerous targets. They took high-resolution photos of Hanoi's defenses, sparing human pilots from the most suicidal missions of the war. They proved that unmanned aviation had a place on the modern battlefield, even in the 1960s. We turn now to the bush pilots and the forgotten giants that kept the logistics of the war flowing daily. The Pilatus PC-6 Porter was the CIA's workhorse, famous for its role in the legendary Air America operations. This Swiss-made aircraft was capable of landing on the side of a mountain or a tiny, muddy clearing, carried everything from spies to refugees, acting as the primary lifeline for the secret operations across Laos and Vietnam. The de Havilland U-6. Beaver was known as the Bush King, a rugged utility plane used by both the Army and Air Force. It was designed to ferry generals and essential supplies to the most remote and muddy outposts in the theater. The Beaver didn't need a paved runway. It only needed a small clearing in the trees and a brave pilot. It was a tough, reliable aircraft that became a common sight in the most isolated corners of the war. The de Havilland U-1 Otter was the Beaver's big brother, a larger single-engine transport with even more cargo capacity. It served as the primary lifeline for special forces at camps, bringing in mail, fresh food, and ammunition to the troops. Its ability to operate in the most primitive conditions made it indispensable for maintaining the remote outposts. It was the heavy lifter of the bush, a dependable friend to the soldiers living on the edge. The Grumman HU-16 Albatross was the Angel of the Sea, a large amphibious flying boat used for search and rescue. It was capable of landing in the open ocean to pick up downed pilots who had ejected over the water, serving as a critical link in the rescue chain. It saved many aviators from capture or drowning in the Gulf. It was a majestic sight, a seagoing airplane that brought hope to those lost at sea. We now focus on the transports, the rugged lifelines that ensured the American forces never ran out of supplies. The C-130 Hercules was the ultimate tactical transport, a plane that could do almost anything asked of it by command. It landed on dirt strips under heavy fire to deliver ammunition and food to besieged bases like the one at Kisan. The Herc was the backbone of the war's logistics, a plane that earned the eternal respect of its crews. The C-123 provider was nicknamed the Sprayer, a smaller transport famous for its role in the controversial Operation Ranch Hand. It was the primary platform for spraying Agent Orange to deny the enemy the cover of the dense jungle canopy. Beyond its role in defoliation, it was also a vital cargo hauler that could get into tight spaces other planes couldn't. It was a sturdy twin-engine transport that worked tirelessly in the most difficult conditions imaginable. The C-7 Caribou was the bush taxi, a specialized transport capable of landing on incredibly short and rough runways. It was used extensively to supply the Special Forces camps hidden deep within the Vietnamese jungle's dense greenery. Its unique short takeoff and landing capabilities meant it could go where no other cargo plane would dare to fly. It was a vital link for the soldiers who operated in the most isolated and dangerous areas of the South. The C-141 Starlifter was the strategic link, the first all-jet strategic transport to enter service with the Air Force. It became known as the Hanoi Taxi for its role in flying the sick, the wounded, and eventually the post home. It brought in the massive tonnage of supplies needed to keep the war effort going from the United States. It was the bridge between the home front and the front lines, a symbol of American logistical might. Finally, we come to the helicopters, the machines that fundamentally changed the way mankind conducts modern warfare on Earth. The UH-1 Iroquois, better known as the Huey, is the absolute and undisputed icon of the Vietnam War experience. It was everywhere, inserting troops into hot landing zones, evacuating the wounded, and providing lethal gunship support. The Huey created the concept of airmobile operations, allowing the Army to move with a speed never seen before. The AH-1 Cobra, or the Snake, was the world's first dedicated attack helicopter, built with a single purpose in mind. It was designed to escort the transport Hueys and provide them with a shield of rockets and machine gun fire. Its slim profile made it a difficult target for enemy riflemen, while its heavy armament made it a terror. The Cobra brought a new level of lethality to the vertical battlefield, hunting the enemy with predatory grace. The CH-47 Chinook, nicknamed the Hook, was the twin-rotor heavy lifter that made the impossible look easy in the field. It carried heavy artillery batteries to the tops of remote mountains and recovered downed aircraft from the deepest jungle. Without the Chinook, the American ability to project power into the rugged terrain of Vietnam would have been halved. It was a powerful, dependable beast of burden that the troops relied on for their very survival. The CH-46C Knight was the Marine bus, a helicopter similar in design to the Chinook but scaled for carrier use. It was the primary assault helicopter for the Marine Corps, carrying troops from ships to the dangerous landing zones. It was a rugged, reliable machine that formed the core of the Marines' vertical envelopment tactics throughout the war. The Sea Knight was the workhorse of the shore, a constant presence in the coastal battles of the North. The CH-53C Stallion, known as the Jolly Green, was the largest and most powerful helicopter used during the war. It was used for heavy transport, and most famously, for long-range combat search and rescue missions deep in the north. With its massive lift capacity and armor, it could venture into areas where other helicopters would be destroyed. It was the giant savior of the sky, a machine that brought hope to those trapped behind lines. The Sikorsky SH-3 Sea King was famous for picking up astronauts, but in Vietnam, it was a search and rescue legend. These heavily armored, Big Mothers would fly deep into North Vietnamese territory to rescue downed aviators from certain capture. Operating from the decks of ships, they were the Navy's primary hope for bringing their pilots back home alive. It was a large, sturdy helicopter that braved the most intense fire to save a single human life. The OH-6 Cayuse, or the Loach, was a small, egg-shaped scout helicopter that played a very dangerous game with the enemy. Its job was to fly at treetop level, literally trolling for enemy fire to expose hidden positions for the Cobras. The pilots who flew the Loach were among the most daring in the entire theater. Of the Vietnam War, they were the bait in a deadly trap, relying on their agility and speed to survive the encounter. The HH-3E, Jolly Green Giant, was a modified transport helicopter designed specifically for the perilous task of combat rescue. It featured heavy armor, defensive machine guns, and a long refueling probe to extend its range deep into enemy territory. It ventured where the air was thick with lead to snatch down pilots from the very jaws of the enemy. The sight of a Jolly Green was the most beautiful thing a downed aviator could ever hope to see. The HH-43 Husky was a quirky helicopter with intermeshing rotors that served as the primary base rescue and firefighting craft. It carried a specialized fire suppression kit to save crews from burning crashes on the runways of the many air bases. While it wasn't a frontline combat machine, its role in saving lives on the ground was absolutely critical to operations. It was a unique, functional machine that did its job with quiet, mechanical efficiency throughout the war. From the iconic thump-thump of the Huey to the window-shattering sonic boom of the F-4 Phantom, these aircraft defined an era. The Vietnam War was a crucible that forced aviation technology to evolve at a pace that was both rapid and terrifying. These machines were more than just tools. They were the extensions of the men who flew them into the fire. They left an indelible mark on the history of flight and the collective memory of the world. Let us look closer at the F-4 Phantom's evolution from a pure interceptor to a multi-role master of the sky. Early models suffered from the lack of a gun, a mistake corrected in later versions like the F-4E, with its nose-mounted Vulcan, learned to fight in the tight high-G turns of a dogfight against the more maneuverable MiGs of the North. The Phantom's adaptability ensured its place in the history books as one of the greatest fighters ever built. The F-105 Thud's cockpit was a cramped, vibrating world of analog gauges and the constant roar of a massive J-75 engine. Pilots flew these missions into the mouth of the Dragon, facing the most sophisticated radar-guided SAMs the Soviets could provide. They developed wild weasel tactics, using specialized aircraft to hunt the radars before they could lock onto the strike force. It was a deadly game of electronic chicken, played at nearly 1,000 miles per hour over the jungle. For the pilots of the F-100 Super Sabre, the war was a constant cycle of low-level passes and the smell of cordite. They provided the immediate response when a unit on the ground was in danger of being completely overrun by the enemy. With 4 20mm cannons and a belly full of napalm, the Hun was a terrifying sight for any enemy force. It paved the way for the dedicated ground attack jets that would dominate the battlefields of the future. The F-8 Crusader pilots were a breed apart. It's the last of the pure air superiority flyers who trusted their eyes over their radar. They lived for the moment the Sidewinder tones screamed in their ears, or when they could walk their tracers onto a wing. Operating from the smaller carriers, they were often the first and last line of defense for the Navy strike groups. The Crusader's variable incidence wing was a mechanical marvel that allowed it to land on a pitching deck. The A for Skyhawk was so small that pilots joked they didn't get into the cockpit, they put the airplane on like a suit, but its small size made it incredibly difficult to hit from the ground, a trait that saved many of its pilots. It was the plane that carried the weight of the Navy's strike mission for the better part of a decade of war. Simple, effective, and rugged, the Skyhawk proved that sophistication isn't always the key to winning a battle. Inside the A-6 Intruder, the Bombardier Navigator worked in a dimly lit world of green radar scopes and complex navigation computers. They flew through the Iron Triangle, where the anti-aircraft fire was so thick it looked like a solid floor of light. The intruder's ability to hit a target within a few feet while flying at 500 knots in the dark was magical. It was the silent partner of the Air Force, doing the dirty work that no other aircraft could handle. The A-7 Corsair II brought the digital age to the cockpit, providing the pilot with a wealth of information at eye level. It could carry a staggering amount of ordnance on its 6 underwing pylons, more than even some of the heavy bombers. Its fuel-efficient turbofan engine gave it the range to stay over a target much longer than the thirsty turbojets. The Corsair II was a reliable, accurate platform that set new standards for what an attack plane could be. The F-111 Aardvark faced a troubled beginning with early crashes, but it eventually redeemed itself as a master of the night. Its terrain-following radar was so advanced it could fly the plane at 200 feet over hills and valleys in total darkness. The North Vietnamese called it the Whispering Death because the bombs often hit before they even heard the jet's engine. It was a glimpse into a future where the darkness was no longer a place for the enemy to hide. The F-5 Freedom Fighter's story is one of what could have been a much larger role if politics had been different. It was the perfect export fighter, cheap enough for smaller nations to maintain while remaining a potent threat in the air. In the hands of South Vietnamese pilots, it fought valiantly to protect their homeland from the encroaching forces of the North. Its sleek Coke bottle shape remains one of the most aesthetically pleasing designs in the history of jet aviation. There was a special bond between the ground troops and the SPAD pilots of the A-1 Skyraider flying above them. When the jets were too fast to see the targets, the Skyraider was there, circling low enough for the pilot to see. Its heavy armor allowed it to soak up incredible amounts of damage and still keep its engine turning through the fire. The SPAD was the guardian angel of the infantry, a slow-moving shield that never let them down in combat. The A-37 Dragonfly was often underestimated by those who didn't know its power, but the pilots who flew it knew better. It was a fighter bomber for the little guy, capable of operating from roads or primitive strips if the main bases were hit. Its twin engines gave it a level of redundancy that saved many pilots when one engine was shredded by ground fire. The Dragonfly was a testament to the idea that a trainer's bones could be hardened for the fire of war. The B-57 Canberra's long, straight wings gave it the lift needed to carry heavy loads at high altitudes for long periods. It was a graceful aircraft, a remnant of the early jet age that still found a vital role in a high-tech conflict. Its crews spent their nights hunting the ghosts of the trail, using flares and early sensors to find the enemy. The Canberra was a quiet professional, doing its job without the fanfare of the faster, louder, supersonic fighters. The B-52 Stratofortress was more than an airplane. It was a strategic weapon that carried the weight of American foreign policy. A single mission, known as an arc-light strike, could change the course of an entire ground campaign in minutes. The psychological impact of the big belly bombers was as significant as the physical destruction they caused on the ground. To the north, they were the ultimate threat. To the south, they were the ultimate protector from the clouds. The AC-47 Spooky's 3 miniguns were synchronized to fire into a single spot on the ground as the pilot banked. This created a cone of fire that was almost impossible to survive for anyone caught within its deadly circular path. The sight of the tracers at night became a legendary part of the Vietnam experience for those who watched from below. Spooky saved hundreds of outposts from being overrun, a loyal protector that never missed a night shift. The AC-130 Spectre's 105mm howitzer was the largest gun ever mounted on a tactical aircraft during the entire war. It allowed the crew to stand off miles away and fire with the accuracy of a sniper, destroying tanks and trucks. The aircraft was a flying command center, filled with the most advanced sensors and communication gear of the time. The Spectre's legacy continues today, as it remains one of the most feared assets in the American military. The A-3 Sky Warrior's crews were known for their bravery. As they flew a massive, slow target from the middle of the fleet, it provided the fuel that allowed the shorter-ranged fighters to reach North Vietnam and return home safely to their ships. As a jammer, the Whale used its massive size to carry the most powerful electronic transmitters in the Navy's inventory. It was a vital, if unglamorous, part of the complex machinery required to win the air war. The E-2 Hawkeye's rotating radome was a feat of engineering, providing the first look at the big picture of the air battle. Its operator sat in a windowless tube, staring at scopes and directing the flow of hundreds of different aircraft at once. They were the invisible hand that guided the Phantoms to their kills and the rescue birds to their survivors. The Hawkeye proved that information was just as lethal as any bomb or missile carried on a wing. The SR-71 Blackbird pilots wore pressure suits like astronauts, for they were essentially flying in space at the edge. They saw the curvature of the Earth while they watched the flashes of SAMs exploding miles beneath their titanium feet. They were the ultimate voyeurs of the war, seeing everything and being touched by absolutely nothing the enemy could fire. The Blackbird was a masterpiece of Cold War engineering that has never been equaled in its speed or its height. The O-1 Bird dog pilots often flew with their windows open, using their own senses as much as their instruments to find the enemy. They knew the jungle like the back of their hands, spotting the slight discoloration of a trail or a misplaced branch. They were the detectives of the sky, piecing together the enemy's movements from the smallest of clues left behind. A bird dog pilot was often the most dangerous man in the sky because of the fire he could bring. The OV-10 Bronco's glass canopy gave the pilot a panoramic view of the battlefield, a critical feature for a scout. It could carry paratroopers, stretchers, or extra fuel, making it one of the most versatile, small planes in the theater. Its ability to take off from a jungle road and loiter over a target for half a day was a game-changer for the FACs. The Bronco was a modern solution to the ancient problem of finding a hidden enemy in the deep brush. The T-28 Trojans of the Secret War were often painted in neutral colors with no national markings to hide their origins. They fought a lonely war over the Plain of Jars, supporting local forces against a numerically superior communist enemy. The pilots were often volunteers, flying for the love of the mission and the thrill of the unconventional fight. The T-28 was a simple machine that did extraordinary things in a part of the world forgot. The YO-3A Quiet Star was so silent that it could fly at 500 feet and be completely unheard by people on the ground. It was the ultimate stealth aircraft before the term had even been coined by the military-industrial complex. By using its infrared sensors, it could paint targets with a laser for the gunships to strike with total precision. It was a revolutionary concept that showed how silence could be used as a powerful weapon on the battlefield. The C-130 Hercules crews developed the Lapes maneuver, dropping heavy pallets of supplies while flying just feet off the ground. This allowed them to supply troops under fire without even having to come to a complete stop on the runway. The Herc's ability to take damage and keep flying became legendary among the crews, who flew the trash haulers. It was the glue that held the entire American effort together, from the deltas to the highlands. From the humid deltas to the high-speed corridors of the North, the catalog of U.S. aviation in Vietnam is complete. These machines and the men who flew them redefined the nature of air power in the modern age of conflict. Their legacy lives on in the technology of today and the stories of bravery that emerge from the jungle mist. This was the war in the era saga of steel, courage, and the relentless pursuit of the horizon in a distant land.